Hello and welcome to Your Name Spoilercast. I'm Miranda Sanchez and joining me is Mike Lamone.
Hey.
And Esme Portillo.
Hello.
Hello. Making your
My
Anime
appearance.
Club
I know.
debut finally.
Yeah, I know. It's been a
Even
little
though-
bit too long, even though it's on my way out.
Aww. That's why we had to get you on.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
So if you haven't joined us before, this is kind of an offshoot of Anime Club. We used to do a regular show, and now we're doing special events like this.
Exactly.
So we're going to spoil all of Your Name. So if you haven't seen it, maybe don't watch this right now. Mark it for later.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just
Come
click
back.
the little save. So what'd you guys think? Like, this is, I'm just so blown away by how popular it's been in the United States. Like, I knew how popular it was in Japan, but I didn't think that would translate necessarily over to the United States audience. Just because, like, that happens.
Yeah.
But then it did, and I was like, oh, these theaters
Yeah, it
are all
almost
full.
won. It almost got into the category for the Oscars and just lost by like one round.
So that's
Yeah.
dumb.
Which I actually think is okay.
Okay. Well, all right.
I don't think it's an Oscar movie. Though
but
I
yeah.
think it is a wonderful movie, but we'll get into it.
Yeah, I loved it. I knew it was going to be kind of sappy, but it wasn't too much. It was funny moments. There was some action, surprisingly, and a little bit of like mystery and like that sort of thing.
I didn't expect it to be so funny.
Yeah, I was literally just about to say that. I did not
Yeah.
go into it thinking it was funny, and like the first scene where like she's like groping herself, I was like, oh,
It's like right off the
Dirty
bat.
talkie.
I was, like my first thought was like, how did this make it so far? Because you people have these like bad like understanding of what anime is, and so when it starts like that, I'm like, oh no, people are going to think that type of movie, and it just really played into that joke like more and more like maturely, and it wasn't something I was expecting.
Yeah, I think if you haven't read the synopsis beforehand, that would throw off a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's like, what's going on?
Yeah. So it's just basically Freaky Friday meets the Lake House.
I actually
That's
didn't
what
read the
someone-
synopsis before I went in, so
Oh,
I
okay.
wasn't
So
really
you
confused.
went in blind.
Okay.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I like you told me about it, and I saw a lot of like articles about this thing, but I didn't want to know too much going into it.
Yeah.
So I went in and was completely confused by the first the first 15 minutes where
Okay.
it finally establishes what's happening and
Yeah.
stuff. So I
Yeah.
was as confused as the characters are.
Yeah, it takes a few minutes to get into the
Yeah.
movie. So what did you guys watch in dub or sub?
I watched subbed.
I had to unfortunately watch it in dub. I would have
Okay.
preferred to watch it in sub.
I watched
Oh.
it in both dub and sub.
Nice.
Just because one of my friends invited me, and I had to watch dub because the sub theater sold
Yeah,
out
that's
first.
exactly why I had to.
Yeah,
do it.
and so I was like, wow, I really want to see. It's kind of weird to think that there's essentially 3 versions of this movie. There's
the
the original Japanese version,
Okay.
which is completely different because like when you translate something, you lose jokes and you lose meanings of things.
Yeah.
Even though you can try to keep it to the best of your ability, it's going to be a little
Of
bit
course.
different.
Yeah.
So then we have the sub and then we have the dub.
Yeah.
And I actually like the dub. Like I like certain things the dub did. Like some of it wasn't great, but then some of it was helpful in characterizing Taki a little bit more early on.
Okay.
So the first half just focuses more so on Mitsuha's experience. Like we see a little bit of Taki in Mitsuha's place, but it's not as focused.
Yeah.
And we see them going back and forth, of course, through their letters or in their diary entries. But there's one joke in particular when Taki goes on the date, and in English, there's a joke about him not having, or him not have, it's kind of weird to put this, okay, like he wouldn't have booked their date at the place they went because it was too expensive. He's like, oh, I would have never taken somebody here. Like he says something like that.
Oh,
But
okay.
when you're in the, with the sub, he doesn't say that at all. Like instead of there being VO there, there's not. It's just Mitsuha talking over their date about how she wanted to go.
And him just having like a
Oh.
weird, because he has
Like,
like,
yeah,
a
he has-
physical reaction when he's saying that in English.
Yeah,
That's
like so it's
interesting.
like weird which scenes were omitted for each of them, like
Okay.
where they replaced VO and where they didn't for different characters, and so like that helped me figure out a little bit more about Taki earlier on, because like you don't really see as much of him aside from him being like really brash and forward in school for Mitsuha until the second half of the movie,
Yeah.
just because that's when she goes away. So
That's interesting. I thought you were going to bring up the scene with Taki and his friends when he was trying to. It was
Like
when
figuring
Mitsuha was in
out?
his body, and
Oh,
he was
so-
talking as if saying me as in like a she.
I just realized this is really hard to talk about because like, well, we're talking about Mitsuha as
Yeah.
Taki with Taki's friends, but yeah. So when she's Taki, yeah, they do the variations of I because there's feminine and
masculine.
masculine
and
ways
she
to
was
say
saying
I.
that out loud.
Yes.
Yes, in
She,
Japanese.
he.
So in the sub, there's so many layers to this.
I know, right?
Yeah, that's why I got tripped up the first. I was like, how do I say this? So yeah, in the sub, they have that joke, and they write out all the different things. And I feel like if you weren't in tune with at least a little bit of Japanese culture, you probably would have had a hard time understanding that joke.
Yeah.
But in the dub, they do a completely different joke,
Yeah. Yeah.
which I think also works because
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
I felt like they made his voice
So-
a little bit more feminine anytime the switch was happening. And obviously, like, physically, he was, like, doing, like, walking a
the
little
way
bit feminine.
Yeah, yeah.
Taki held
Yeah.
himself when it
Or,
was
like, he'd just always be like
Mitsuha
this.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. The joke I think in the dub was about Taki getting lost instead of about Taki
Yeah.
referring to.
Oh.
yeah, like, he couldn't find his way
Himself.
to
Okay.
school or work. And they were like, how is that possible? Like, how
Okay.
do you not
Yeah, so
remember
just
that?
kept making up like weird things about like why.
Interesting. So they didn't even
was
try to
lost.
say like me or.
No, they didn't try to do
Okay.
that because it doesn't work.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
in English, like because we just say I.
Mhm. I was
So-
wondering about that. I was
yeah,
wondering, how are
so-
they going to do this for the.
There are things like that I appreciated about the dub, like how it was written. But there's one thing I hated that killed the scene that was really important.
Was it the music? Because I really
No.
hated the music.
Wait,
really?
what?
Yeah, I did
Dang.
not like the voice for the English.
The Japanese
Yeah.
one was really good, though.
Okay, yeah, but
Yeah.
Oh, for
it
the
threw me
English?
off anytime
For
it
the
was like really
music.
nice moments, and
Yeah.
there's just like this guy just singing that doesn't really feel like he's toned.
Oh.
Wait, so they don't have dubbed versions of the soundtrack?
No, they
Or-
do.
They
Oh,
do.
I don't like the English
You,
version.
okay.
I haven't heard the Japanese one, but
It was so. Yeah, the one scene that they messed up, I think, in the dub was toward the end when they're meeting at Twilight.
Yeah.
And Mitsuha is just like, and you touched my boobies. I was like,
I think in the sub they said boobs, right?
yeah, they just said boobs.
Okay.
And so like there's a
Yeah.
word like I would never call
I don't think
my
girls,
breast my
girls
boobies.
don't say boobies.
Nobody
right?
says that.
No,
like,
guys.
Children
I mean, guys
say that.
kinda
guys
do.
say that
Guys say
about
yeah, like little
Yeah,
kids
yeah.
say that. And so like that scene was just like, no, because it was just like one of those little things that really does throw it off tonally. Like, even though
Yeah.
it was a funnier part of the meeting, it was still like
Yeah,
a,
they're teenagers. Like,
It was
they're-
like
at
a-
that
it's like a
point
little
you
too
should
far.
know you're not
yeah,
speaking that way.
that's like a
anymore.
really weird specific complaint, but I just didn't like it.
It's like we don't say that.
But the rest of that scene was real good.
Oh yeah.
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 Whenever when Mitsuha was going to write, then the pen just
Oh,
drops.
man.
Just like,
Especially because that was very sudden. Like, it wasn't like just a soft music, like, transition. It was just, like, as sudden as he experienced it, she just disappeared. The
Yeah.
pen just dropped, and I was like, wait, oh, my God.
Yeah.
Oh, no. But, so I actually thought the movie was really good, but I didn't think it, like, kind of what Miranda said earlier, that it would have necessarily deserved, like, an Oscar nomination.
Okay.
so it kind of comes down to like editing, not only with the dub, but also the sub. Like that was my problem. Was like some scenes felt like they dragged a little bit too long, or maybe some ideas weren't fleshed out properly. Like we were talking beforehand about how the end is kind of a big thing about them being in love, and
Yes.
I don't think I ever got that feeling from them.
Thank
let's
you.
talk
Oh my
about
God,
that.
I really
You
want to
too?
talk about it. Yes,
Okay.
I walked out of that feeling confused because even though I really liked what I saw and I did get emotional, like
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
like they finally meet and all this other stuff and the village is going to be
I
destroyed,
have a thing to say about that too.
I did not get how they fell in love. Like they never established it. Like they made each other's lives better, but the
And
fact
they-
that she even set him up on a date. Like, and then the date just didn't go wrong because she's like, well, you're in love with someone else. When she said, when
Or
When
you're
those
interested in
little,
somebody else.
yeah, I was
Yeah.
like, how? When did that happen?
I think it's weird because it's like they're in love with each other's lives and not so much each other.
Yeah.
Like they're living each other's experiences and seeing this like a big part of the movie is about identity and finding out what that means, of course. And I think that was really interesting, but I don't ever see why, because they don't interact with each other as people.
So here's my perspective. I think, yes, at first they were like thinking it was a dream and all that, but I think mainly because, well, yes, they've been living each other's lives, but also they're also interacting with their phones to each other.
Yeah, but it's also like, could you fall in love with somebody by reading their diary?
Well, I mean, imagine like you're living.
Well,
with
they're writing it for
they're
each
practically
other.
living with each other.
Yeah.
To say, and like I think that, and this is probably the general consensus, but the more you're with someone or nearby someone, like whether it's school or work, you get feelings for them, right?
Yeah.
I know in school I did. Shoot, it's always the girl that sits next to me. But anyway, in this case, it's just like they're in each other's bodies. You know what I mean? So it's even
Like-
in closer relationships.
Like
Sure.
I understand they're learning about each other,
Yeah.
their quirks through their friends telling them like, oh, you usually do this, but now you're doing this.
Yeah.
You're usually more
Yeah.
soft spoken. You're not as strong. But
Yeah.
there's a difference to me of living someone's life than being next to that person. You
like
know?
them having a special kind of intimacy makes sense.
Sure.
But I wouldn't call it love is the problem, because I feel like it's weird because they just don't know each other as themselves. Like
they don't ever talk on the phone with each other, just when there's like these writings.
Yeah, but at the same time, like those days that they're spending essentially with each other, even though they're not talking to each other, they are thinking about each other the whole time and wondering about what's the other one's doing, right?
But more so for like protecting themselves, right? Like
don't
do these things because
which they do get out of the way.
This is still my life, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think like the reason why Mitsuhiko was crying and why he was crying, I think is because he was helping him out because he knew he wasn't, had the skill or not the skills, the interaction or the
So I get what you're saying. Like you're saying, like maybe he didn't have the confidence to talk to senpai and all that kind of things. Yeah. But also, it felt selfish. Like that felt like what Mitsuha wanted to do, not what Taki wanted. Like Taki may have been interested in her and like took photos of her and stuff. But even like when you go back and forth, they're like, "Don't do this because that's not what I want." And like Mitsuha said, like I wanted to go on that date. Like that was for me.
Yeah, I found that to be a bit intrusive because, granted, like it helps you finally talk to the girl that you've always liked, but you're not doing it as like a let's talk about how we can make this happen. I want to help you. It's more like, I set up this date, by the way. I didn't tell you about it.
Sorry, part of your life is my life now.
and which is even weirder because she did end up liking Mitsuha. He like the other girl. She liked Taki, a little bit before, but she really started to like him when it was switched, right? It's even more confusing for the person that is liking that person because at the end of the day, they don't. She doesn't like that version of him, right? Because when they finally had the date, she's like, well, you're very different. And she says the whole, it's because you're thinking someone else. But I also felt like it was more like, you're not the person I've been really getting attracted to. You're very different on this date.
Sure. It's kind of tough. I think because they were living each other's lives, they were picking up each other's, little quirks, I guess. I mean, maybe that's kind of why. And also, throughout that whole sequence, there was a lot of time skip.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, sure. They had like that musical interlude to kind of show that
so,
they were
like,
doing a lot of
exactly. So all what probably would have needed more time to like flesh out why they were feeling the way they were was ruined by that whole.
Yeah, I wish they would have switched it a little bit. Like maybe spend less time in that second half and flesh out the first half more, so the second half would be a bit more impact for me. But I also like that you have this feeling and you're a dude and I'm a girl and like we're on these different levels of it, which plays into the movie itself like really well.
Yeah, like there's so many things that I really like about that, like how we spent so much more time with Mitsuha at the beginning because then the second half is like way more impactful. Yeah, and you find out, oh, she's dead. Whoops.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that part was hard. It's just like,
no, that was.
I kind of felt like it was coming. Then, like as soon as he couldn't get a hold of her, it was like there's something.
Oh, wrong. I could not tell. I was just like really trying to figure out like, did she just disconnect her phone? Like what happened? So when they do that whole, it's 3 years in the future type thing. I'm like, oh no, I cared about you so much at this point, and now you're just gone. How are they ever going to fix this? Especially because when the comets come in, that's it's such a beautiful scene. I love the animation in that. It's so pretty.
Just the entire film was gorgeous.
Yeah, and then to know that is actually the precursor to a horrible tragedy, I thought was actually the strongest part of the movie for me. It's just like everything that was sad was still very beautiful.
I think that's like a big thing with Shinkai, though. Like he's very into melodrama and beautiful skies and metaphors and that kind of thing. And I think that's something that also is really intriguing me about Your Name is that I wouldn't want to have consumed this story any other way than as a movie. Like I think animation is the best way to show this movie because like you don't get that impact of like what the sky looks like and like all the metaphors that go into it.
Right.
And just like everything kind of feels like a dream in a way because if you look at Tokyo, like how it's just like glistening and perfect and like the way I thought about it was like it's the way I would think of Tokyo having been there and like part of a memory.
Yeah.
Like you would the perfect view of it, and I think that speaks a lot to how
and the
they
fact that he
view
wants
it
to be an architect and like preserve the beauty because it's changing type of stuff.
Yeah, and so I think that so much of that is so important to like the theme of the film that like this couldn't have been in like a live action movie.
Oh yeah. Let's speak about that too. Musubi, which I thought was Masugi for a second. The whole tie knot thing. I'm not sure what it's called,
cords.
but the chords, yes.
Yeah.
But I thought that was really cool, showing that rural Japan and then Tokyo, and then especially with tradition and whatnot. but I had no idea I was gonna go take that like total sci-fi mystical route. But yeah, what do you think about that? Like, it seems like it's been in the family for generations.
Yeah, I actually was a little bit more confused about that too. Like, I understand that he at one point says that's why you've all, like, this family has
It's led up to this moment.
Yeah, it's all led to trying to save the town. Is that what he was insinuating? That the whole family having these experiences was to prepare, I don't know, for her from saving the whole village.
I mean,
though the grandma never told her.
I think that was just his interpretation. Also, the grandma didn't remember until she started acting weird.
Oh, right.
Oh,
yeah,
she
'cause
pointed
the
that out. She's
memory
like,
thing
you're
is,
having
like, a big
dreams,
part.
right?
Yeah.
And it's like, I didn't actually catch part of that. Like, when she speaks to Taki when they had just gone to the body of the god. And they're like,
Yep.
like, you're dreaming, right? Because, like, that, I guess that's what they call it when they're swap bodies. And I think that was, like, interesting. That it's something that she can kind of remember but can't really remember, because like they did say, like, there's the rules for them swapping bodies are really weird. Like,
Yes.
actually, because
But it is like dreaming, right? You wake
Sure.
up sometimes, and I'm always so upset I can't
But
remember
the
the
thing-
dream that I just had. Like, I remember it for 5 minutes,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
just gone
That's
forever.
gone,
but
yeah.
what also confuses me a little bit is how they remember what's happening every time they switch bodies, and remember to keep diaries and all this stuff if they forget about it the next morning.
Don't they do it before they, like, they wake up, right, when they're in the new body? So they do it before they go to bed or something. I thought that's what it insinuated.
Yeah, they spend
Maybe.
the day in each other's body.
And as
It's
they're
weird
going to
because
sleep,
like
they write the
they
diary.
remember that something's happening to them, but they can't remember exactly what. But they know how to keep notes. Like, it's just like, I don't know. I could probably write do a whole discussion on the logistics of them swapping
Oh,
bodies
you're right,
and
because
how
I
they
just
remember
assumed
things.
every day they just remember the day before that they spent the lives of someone else. But that doesn't make sense because some of the rules they said is sometimes they don't remember everything.
Well, also, they're remembering 2 different lives, so it could be even more. I think maybe that's why they need reminders, because, you know, yesterday was technically Mitsuha, but then the day before was Taki, and I'm like, what the hell did I do the day before?
Yeah, it's like I had lost this day in my
Yeah,
life,
right.
but I lived it, but I don't remember.
Yeah. Do you think the parents also had that?
Well, not her dad,
switch?
but it seems
You
like her
don't think so?
mom did for sure.
I think they did.
Her dad?
How would the dad? Because the dad's not part of the
Because there was that flashback when the mom died,
Hmm.
and then he was in the house alone. He was crying, and he was saying, "I could have saved her."
I think that was him just being
I think that was just
hard
him
on
being-
himself.
yeah,
That's
sad.
what usually I feel people
But
go
then
through when they're...
Also, when I think when Taki as Mito comes into the office to pretty much
convince
to-
them to do the alert.
Right.
that, or at some point,
No,
and he's
yeah,
like,
that's
and
when-
then Dad's like, "Who are you?" I'm
I
like,
feel
he
like-
Yeah, so
knew.
that was confusing. Everyone, like the grandmother and the father, were able to tell that it wasn't her.
Yeah.
But
I think that makes sense because it's like someone you're so close to and they're acting so wildly different.
Sure.
I think you can tell like there's just something not right with them.
but did he literally think
like that
she
he was
a different
just a different person. That's
Maybe.
what I
Because
think.
if you
But
come
then-
to me screaming, I'm not gonna just assume a body swap, right?
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah, I kind of don't feel like they were the ones doing the body swap though. Like, you never know. I mean, it could be.
I'm convinced the family,
it makes
the
sense.
women in the family, like the
Yes.
mother and the
Yeah.
grandmother is. I'm not convinced with the dad, but also
well, because he's
Well, I
outside
mean,
of the family too. Like,
Yeah,
she's
exactly.
not.
But I
'cause he
mean,
married
technically,
into it.
Taki
Yeah.
is also, but then they're having that experience together. So
Yeah,
I'm saying,
how is he chosen?
I think it's just random.
It's just super random.
yeah,
It just happens to
well,
be
there
someone
was,
maybe you'll fall in
the
love
grandma
with in the
did
future.
say that there was a meteor that crashed like years ago.
Right, the whole
and that's-
prophecy,
and that's
which is
when they
yeah.
the whole body swatching or swapping thing swapping.
I wish they kind of delved into that. Maybe it's probably not important, but to
Yeah,
me,
yeah.
I'd love to have known what is it that these other people experienced that helped with the final, because it
I-
doesn't
I
seem like
feel
the
like
other ones
he
were
was-
important.
Yeah, I feel like he was just assuming that. Like, that's what it felt to me. Is like you're assuming that this thing that happens to this family is all leading up to this moment,
Okay.
which it could be, but also, it felt like
Maybe
a very
not.
throwaway line to me. It's just like not something that
Maybe
we should
they
really
all,
focus
every
on.
woman in that family just experiences
Yeah,
that
I
with
think.
someone.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
just the important part is that this is a hereditary thing that her family just experienced for generations
Because of that
women.
wine.
And maybe I mean, well,
sake,
also
whatever it's called.
they do come from a line of like
Mikos.
Mikos, yeah, and they are in charge of the shrine, so maybe that's just part of it.
Yeah, that might be. Yeah, that might be. It's a little
Getting some
girl
divine
might
gifts.
have her own experience. We'll get a sequel where she's
It's the daughter goes through.
Yeah.
Oh, not the daughter. The
The
younger
sister,
sister.
yeah.
Okay, I know it's kind of weird because we're kind of down on this, but I do want to like reiterate that I do like a lot of the things that did. Like I do like the body swap things for all of its weird roles. Like I was totally willing to forgive a lot of it. One thing I could not forgive though is the anime opening of this weird movie.
I was really confused.
I didn't mind the foreshadowing at the very beginning with the comet falling, or of her
them
there, or them on the trains. Like I think that's fine because it gives you a little bit like of confusion and sets up things for like when this timeline is. That's good. But the opening thing, like
it's kind of weird for a movie.
Especially when you want to bring someone that doesn't watch anime a lot. Like I love anime, but I don't watch it a lot. And I wanted to bring my boyfriend to go watch it, but had he come with me, he would have been entirely like, I don't understand what was that point of that. And I'd have to then explain, this is what happens usually at the beginning of an episode. It's happening in a movie.
My main problem with it, like I think there's ways you can do opening credits with music or whatever and be fine. Tons of movies do that.
Yeah.
But the problem with it is that it like spoils everything. It shows them as adults. It shows them on the trains.
Yes.
I'm just like,
well, because you watched it twice.
No,
so
well,
you kind of
even in my first viewing, like as he was looking for her and all this stuff, like as they were setting it all up for that final moment of whether or not she gets saved, like I already knew because I remember seeing her as an adult. I was like, she was
I didn't remember,
older.
so that didn't spoil it.
So it kind of spoils the whole like her surviving thing.
Yeah, so like if you remember that like me, then it's just like, oh man,
that is a disappointment.
I guess like if you're just watching for the first time, you don't know how old they are. It is only a 3-year difference, so they just essentially kind of look the same a little bit.
Yeah, the only difference for her is that she just has longer hair.
Yeah,
and like her
well, they look adult. They're not wearing their uniforms is a big thing.
Sure, that's
like,
fair.
Especially in.
I think you're able to pay more attention to details than I am because I did not pick up on any of that. I think I was just more like, why is this happening in the movie? Especially not even because it wasn't at the beginning. It was like
further in.
Yeah, it was like 5 or 10 minutes into it that I was
like a few minutes in.
Like why is this happening?
So I also felt like this wanted to be an OVA at one point. Just because there's so many ideas, like so many places where it could stop or like skip forward or things. And because of that opening, I was like, did you want this to be an OVA? Like that would have been fine with me.
So the editing on that is definitely
like not to discount that this is a wonderful movie. I think absolutely
it's really cute.
Really happy that it's doing well. It's very sweet.
Yeah.
And this is the first time I think for me that I've seen an anime movie at theaters in 2 different versions. Like I didn't when I went to the theater to go see the sub, the fact that there was also a dub version when that one was sold out, which great that it was sold out. I was like, that's great that like, you know, American audiences are not only being introduced to it more, but they're actually clamoring for it because why else would they have so many times for it?
Yeah.
Yeah, Your Name is the highest grossing film or international or anime film, right? I feel like it is.
I don't think so, no.
Anyway.
but I think it's getting close to it.
It's getting pretty,
I know that like for its opening weekend, it was like 1.7
I think
million.
Spirited Away is still number 1, but I think this one's second.
So like the problem is like we have Japan's numbers, but stuff still is coming out here.
Got it.
But maybe internationally, I don't really know.
Okay.
I would check the numbers, but I know it opened like 13th at the box office this weekend for only 303 theaters or something.
Yeah, it's only shown for like a week too, I think.
Yeah, it's pretty short.
Or here anyway. But yeah, I think.
So, do you guys want to say one moment you loved? So we can end in a positive, because generally we do feel really positively about it.
I think the positivity has come out. Like we've dissected it, but I don't think it's come off like.
I didn't hate this. I really, really liked it.
No, it was great. I liked the Twilight moment. Just any scene really on that mountain. It explained a lot of stuff. It had a very touching moment with the family, but also that moment when they finally like were in their bodies talking to each other for the first time. Oh my god! And then when she ran and then she fell, and it's like, oh, his name is on my hand. I love you. I'm like, damn it.
Like, that's not what I needed.
I thought that I had that exact same thought. I was just like, oh, that's so beautiful, but Nietzsche doesn't know your name.
Could have been like signed
I think my favorite moment was when he's actually going to try to find her. Like just the anguish. He doesn't even understand his anguish. Like he wants to know something, doesn't really understand it because there are many times he forgets what he's doing, and then he just has these 2 people that follow him around.
There's some good jokes in the English version.
Those are some good friends there, by the way, who just follow you around for the whole day.
Yeah, and then the fact that he just decides, not only am I going to continue doing this, I'm going to do this on my own, and spare my friends
Yeah.
from the rest of this.
Yeah.
I thought was the strongest part of the movie for me because we all have that one thing, right, that we're all just like super passionate about, and sometimes we don't even know why we're doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just really like that the movie really expressed on that point.
I think my favorite part, but also the part where I got saddest, is when Mitsuha goes to Tokyo as herself to go
Ooh.
find him,
Yeah.
and she's like I like how it emphasized just like her walking everywhere and being confused and kind of lost.
Yeah.
And, like trying to figure out like she's been in this place before, but she doesn't
Yes.
quite remember.
Yeah.
And she went to the place where they were supposed to have their date. I think, like she
Oh.
went.
That
She went
bridge
to the
was a
bridge.
lot-
The
Yeah.
bridge, yeah.
Yeah, and she waited, and like they weren't there, and she wanted to go on that date, but it wasn't. It was 3 years too
And
early.
then in the subway, oh god.
And then she sees him, and he's like, "What? I don't
who?
know you." It's so good. Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, I just wanted
It's a
to
good movie.
shove that in there because it's so good. And then they save Itamori, and it's really great.
Oh yeah, yeah, dude. I was so surprised that happened. By the way, just like the city was devastated. I was like, wow.
Yeah, no, I like that if you're not spoiled right in the beginning, that I kind of did think it was going to end on just a bittersweet note. And I like when movies are able to surprise me in that way. Like, if it would have done that, it would have been really sad, but that's fine.
Have you seen
Yeah.
5 centimeters per second?
No.
Okay, go watch that. Okay.
Same director.
It's kind of similar, not in its story, but in like
Yeah.
The
some
bittersweet.
themes and like following some people's lives.
Yeah.
It's like misconnection kind of
I
thing.
write that down as I walk out.
Yeah. It's on Crunchyroll, but yeah.
But yeah. it's a-
Heartache.
I know.
Good,
I do want to watch the dub still. So
Yeah,
at some point.
I totally recommend seeing both. Like, I think it's really interesting to see how they translate. Like, there's a lot of smart things too for adapting it for Western audience.
Yeah.
I think that's a hard thing is when we get something that has such big cultural roots, like Japan having this movie that has very cultural themes that are, if you don't understand it, it's like easy to miss things. And I think they did mostly a good job of like adapting that for a Western
That's good.
audience.
Yeah.
Especially the different lives, right, that they live. Like, you definitely felt the difference between the rural and the urban.
Oh, yes.
Like,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
just really felt. And I've never been in Tokyo yet, but seeing this inside of his apartment gave me anxiety. Like, oh my God, it's so small.
Oh, it's like my apartment next. It's even bigger. Yeah, for sure that. And I think Funimation did a pretty good job of like figuring out how to do the honorific things and like that I joke and replacing it. And like there's a funny joke about him maybe being catfished and like all this stuff. It's very much Western. Yeah, that wasn't in
That
the
was
Japanese
really
version.
funny.
Oh
Yeah.
really?
Yeah, like
Ah.
there's lots of little things. Like I highly encourage if you haven't seen one or the other, like just maybe go check it out if you have
Okay.
time or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
It's just interesting to see the differences in like how they adapted it.
Cool.
So.
All right, I'll do that.
Good stuff, guys. So please be part of this conversation. Let us know what you guys liked, what you didn't like, and what anime movies you guys are looking forward to
Yeah.
next. And Esme and Mike, thank you guys so much for joining
Of
me.
course.
Thank you for having
I'm
me.
glad to be here.
And yay anime.
Yay,
Anime.
anime!
Bye.